Hello, and it's party time because we can now render in Blender with EEVEE with a special alpha version of Blender. And this is something the Planetarium community has been waiting for a long time. And I am so excited to show you what it can do. First, you're going to need, uh, let me show you, you're going to need a special build of Blender. This is not the regular alpha build. This is actually the PR159474 build of Blender Alpha, and this contains the fisheye camera renderer for EEVEE. I'll give you a link to this in the description, and you can download this here. If you are not familiar with downloading and installing software on your computer, I'm going to ask you to get some help with that. I'm not going to hold your hand on that one here. Also, because this is a little not exactly dangerous, but you could mess up your files with an alpha software. Your alpha software might not be stable. So it comes with some minor risks that you might want to be aware of. For example, don't use your regular production files in Blender Alpha. Make a copy of that file before you bring it to Blender Alpha because it might eat that file, for example. But once you get that, also go ahead and head over to NASA Scientific Visualization Studio, get some of those deep star maps. You can download that with the download link, select the appropriate resolution for your dome, and you need to, typically if you have a 2K render, you're going to want a 4K star map. Also scroll on down and you will find the constellation lines. We're going to use that as well. So let me show you what we're doing. This is a scene I already have set up in Blender, and you can see that the scene is fully surrounded with stars and beautiful constellations in pretty colors. And when I go to the camera view, we can see that we are in EEVEE and we have a fisheye render. It's not even a render, this is live. This is a fisheye picture of the scene live in EEVEE. And if I hit play, we see that it plays nice and smooth. But how long does it take to render? Well, it renders pretty fast. So let's go over to rendering and let me open up a new slot so we can see how fast it renders. That took 0.68 seconds for that render, and that render included a comp time. So there was render time and compositing. Here is what the shader nodes look like. We've got a couple of environment maps. These are the stars and constellations. We're doing a bunch of magical stuff to them to make them pretty colors. And I will refer back to this occasionally during the tutorial because I essentially was just messing around while I made this, and then came up with something I was pleased with, so I wanted to share with you all. But let's get started. So we're going to click up here. We're going to change this to, say, a copy settings. What that does is it makes another copy of your scene. And so I'll just call this demo. And in my demo scene, I need to make sure I have a camera. This is our first step. We're going to set up our camera. So Shift A, find your camera, click. And if you're starting from nothing, you can use the camera you've already got, or you can delete it and make a new one. Your camera needs to point up. So let's change these numbers. We got the camera pointing up. The camera needs to be an EEVEE. We are EEVEE. The camera needs to be a, not perspective, but panoramic. Fisheye, not fisheye equisolid, we need fisheye equidistant. If your render has a black ring around it, then that means you've got the wrong fisheye. So we got fisheye equidistant. Normally 180 degrees is what I use, but that's actually variable, and you can bring that up and down to do like a zoom effect, or if you have a larger than 180 degree dome. Also, setting the clipping can be important. If you find that objects disappear if they get too far away from your camera, make the clip end distance farther. Don't go nuts with this though, because you don't want to compress your Z vector too much in your Z depth too much in your render output. That can have consequences that we're not going to go over today. Okay, so we have our camera. Let's add a world. Right now, if I go up to render preview, I just get a black screen. So let's go into the world settings, world properties. Let's add a new world. And that world is gray. You can click the gray box, make it any color of gray that you want. Any color you want as long as it's gray, or any color you want actually. But we don't want just any color, we want that to be stars. So let's click this little dot. We want an environment texture. Open. And we're going to select the environment texture that we'll work with. And I'm doing a 2K render, so I'll pick the 4K star map. So there we go. We have stars in the background. And if I go into my render preview with the camera view, I will see my beautiful Milky Way arching overhead. If I click on this lock, I can move the camera around and look all around my scene. Well, if I want to get rid of that grid, I can just turn off, whoopsies, I turn off this thing here. Now I can look around my scene in 3D. Okay, I'm going to reset my camera back to where I had it. Let's add the constellation lines. We're going to do that in the shader workflow now. Hi, I'm future Ron, the newer, cooler version of Ron, who was just editing and realized that Ron missed a step. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. When you switch over to the shading workflow, normally that's going to be on object mode, so you're not going to see all that world shader stuff. So you have to just go right up here to object, change that to world, and you'll be able to see what Ron was talking about. Don't know why he missed it, but there you go. Back to your regularly scheduled tutorial. What we need is another environment map. I'm going to get this a little bit spread out. We're about to do a lot of damage here. Okay. This is an environment map input, so I need another one of those. So Shift A, ENV, environment texture, open. I want not my star map this time, I want constellation figures, open. Now if I replace this, I got my lines. But we need to add these two things together somehow. We can do that with an add color. And do it just like that. Now, how do I make the lines into those pretty rainbow shapes, or the pretty rainbow colors? Well, I did that with a gradient texture. So I did a gradient texture, and not linear, but I did a radial. Then I fed that into a ramp. So we have our color ramp here. We're going factor into factor. And if I just plug this in, oh, how did I do that? I've got my vector here. I think I multiplied. Yeah, mix color multiply. So I'm going to multiply this black and white picture by this color. So wherever it's black, it'll still be black, but wherever it's white, it'll take on whatever color I put up in here. So let's put in a couple of different colors. So there's red, and over here we'll do like a blue. And let's see how that looks. There we go. I have a hard line here where it blends. So what we can do is change this from RGB to HSV. Change this from near to maybe clockwise, or maybe counterclockwise. And I get a rainbow. That rainbow needs to start and stop around the same color. So let's take this blue and change it to a red that's just on the blue side of red. And that gives us a nice spectrum of color all the way around. But how did I get it to glow like this? Well, I'll show you that in just a moment. Let's go into compositing. And we need to do a render. One render. And we also need a new composite node, noodle. And why isn't that showing up? There it is. So in here, let's do a bloom. And bloom is going to act wherever it finds a color value that's bigger than 1, it's going to add a special effect to it, which is to blur it a little bit and make it bloom, as we say. So we have our bloom set up here, but let's go back to shading because I don't see it blooming yet. Whoops. We can turn on our compositor, right? Normally it's going to be on compositor disabled. Let's turn it on compositor always. That'll give us a preview of what the compositor is doing. But why is it not blooming? Well, this isn't hot enough yet. So let's take this add where we're adding the colorful constellations into the stars, and let's turn it up to 11. And I expected a better result than that. Let's see. Oh, clamp factor is turned on. So when you have clamp factor on it, it's clamping this factor actually down to 1, even though you told it 11. So turn that off. There we go. A nice, beautiful bloom is happening. Okay, so far we have gradient texture, color ramp, and that's multiplying by the environment texture of the constellation lines. That's being added with a multiplicative factor of 11 to the stars. And you know, those stars are starting to be kind of hard to see, so let's amp those up a little bit. If I do a gamma adjustment and turn that down a little, we'll start to see those stars pop out. And what I could also do is maybe a curve, RGB curve. And I could say, let's let the darker stars be dark, but let the brighter ones be more bright. You can play with that a little bit until you get the background looking the way that you want. Finally, let's animate this thing. So I'm going to get a timeline, but I'm not going to use keyframes this time. We're actually going to do it another way. So I got my timeline. And I need to drive the vectors. Let me just zoom in here. You see this vector? I need to change this vector so that the picture turns. So we're gonna get a few more nodes here. We're gonna do a texture coordinate. We will use generated coordinates for this case. And that's because we're using an environment texture, not a regular image texture. You use generated coordinates. Plug that into both of those, because if you don't, they won't stay synchronized. And you know what? I was just kidding. Let me get rid of that. And we need to also add mapping. So generated into mapping, mapping out to here and to here. And now when we rotate in the Z direction, we get our rotation of the sky background. Problem is, I just want to rotate Z, and I want to do it without doing keyframes. I could do a keyframe, I could move my timeline, I could do another keyframe, and that would do it. But I want to be a little more automagic. So we're going to do this a different way. Let's add a scene time. And if I plug seconds into rotation, then a lot of crazy stuff's going to happen, and everyone will get sick in your planetarium. The reason is because it's doing seconds, and it's feeding the seconds value into X, Y, and Z rotation at the same time. That's no good. So let's not do that. Let's actually just have it affect the Z, but I can only plug it into all of them. No problem. We can do a combine XYZ node, plug that in here, then just plug seconds into Z. Now that's rolling pretty fast. So you might use a multiplier in here. Let's do a math multiplier. Math, utilities math. Change add to multiply. And we can pull that value down to something more reasonable. Now that we have that set up with our camera selected, make sure that's selected up there. Let's go back to here. And we can change the X coordinate to 90. And that's as if we're on the equator. You can see Polaris is right up here. There's the Big Dipper coming up, pointing at Polaris. And if we change our X value here, we're changing our latitude. So I'm going to say 90 plus 32, whoops, 90 plus 32. And that's about my latitude. So we're looking at the sky. Imagine you are laying on your back and you're looking up, and your head is toward the north and your feet are toward the south. On your left hand is the east, and rising up with Orion there and Sirius. Down here in the south, we have Pegasus setting, or excuse me, over in the west, Pegasus is setting, and there goes Pisces. And folks, this renders real fast, so remember it's EEVEE. Super fast renders. In fact, if I started rendering animation, let's watch how fast this goes. Just popping off those frames, quick as you please. So, I'm going to stop this. And it looks like I stopped it before it composited, but that's what that looks like. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And once again, if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, that's the place where you can do it. I've been Ron Proctor, and I hope that you will have a great time rendering fisheye with EEVEE.